The last person I expected to betray me was my own sister. But there she sat at Grandma's funeral, dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief while I gripped the wooden pew so hard my knuckles turned white. I'm Serenity, and this is how my family fell apart. She looks peaceful, my mother Patricia whispered, squeezing my hand. I nodded, unable to speak. Grandma Paisley had been more than just a grandmother to me. She was my confidant, my shelter during storms, the one person who truly understood me. The church was packed with familiar faces, all wearing appropriately somber expressions. My sister Madeline sat in the front row beside our father, her designer dress a stark contrast to my simple black outfit. She'd always been the flashy one, while I preferred substance over style. Would anyone like to share a few words? The minister asked. I stood up, my legs shaking. Grandma taught me that wealth isn't about money, I began, my voice cracking. It's about the richness of relationships, about treating family like the treasure it is. Madeline shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away. After the service, we gathered at Bryce's law office for the reading of the will. The family lawyer had known us since we were kids, but today his familiar smile seemed strained. Before we begin, Bryce said, adjusting his glasses, I want to remind everyone that Paisley was very specific about her wishes. My father, Reuben, cleared his throat impatiently. Let's get on with it, shall we? Bryce began reading, and with each word, my world tilted further off its axis. The family home, to Madeline. The investment portfolio, to Madeline. The vintage car collection, to Madeline. My heart raced as I waited for my portion, but when it came, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. To Serenity, Bryce read, his voice hesitant. I leave the outstanding debts on the following accounts. What? I interrupted, standing up. That can't be right. There must be some mistake. Madeline's lips curved into a slight smile. Grandma knew what she was doing, sis. She always said you were good with money. I'm sure you'll handle those debts just fine. Show me the documents, I demanded, reaching for the papers in Bryce's hands. My father stood up, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. Serenity, sit down. You're making a scene. Making a scene? I laughed incredulously. Grandma would never saddle me with debts while giving everything to Madeline. She always preached about fairness and family values. People change, Madeline said smoothly. Maybe she just saw things differently toward the end. My mother wrung her hands. Darling, please, let's not fight about this. I turned to Bryce. When was this will dated? He shuffled through the papers. 3 months ago. 3 months? I shook my head. I was with her every weekend. She never mentioned changing her will. Because she didn't need to explain herself to you, Madeline snapped, standing up. Face it, Serenity, you're not as special as you think you are. The room fell silent. I looked around at their faces. Madeline's smug satisfaction, my father's indifference, my mother's discomfort, and Bryce's careful neutrality. Something was very wrong here. I want copies of everything, I said finally, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Every document, every amendment, every signature. Of course, Bryce replied too quickly. I'll have them sent to you. As we filed out of the office, Madeline caught up with me in the hallway. Don't make this ugly, Serenity. Just accept it and move on. I turned to face her. You know what's strange, Madeline? Last time I visited Grandma, she told me she had something important to tell me. But when I came back the next day, you were there, and she seemed different, almost afraid. Madeline's smile faltered for just a second. You're imagining things. Am I? Because those debts you're so happy to see me inherit? They're not Grandma's style. She was meticulous about money. Something doesn't add up. Let it go, she hissed, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my arm. You'll only embarrass yourself. I pulled away from her grip. You know what Grandma used to say about karma, Madeline? It always comes full circle. As I walked away, I could feel her eyes burning into my back. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to get to the bottom of this. Grandma had taught me that family was everything, but she'd also taught me that sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you the most. And I had a feeling I was about to learn exactly what she meant by that. The stack of papers from Bryce's office sat on my kitchen table, like a ticking bomb. 3 days after the will reading, and I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I picked up my phone and dialed Enzo, my closest friend since college. "I need your financial expertise," I said when he answered. "Can you come over?" "Give me 20 minutes and coffee better be ready," he replied. While waiting for Enzo, I spread out the documents: bank statements, loan agreements, property deeds, all of them telling a story that didn't match the grandmother I knew. Enzo arrived with his laptop tucked under his arm. "All right, show me what we're dealing with." "Look at these debt statements," I said, pushing several papers toward him. "They're all dated within the last 4 months." He adjusted his glasses, scanning the documents. "These interest rates are insane. No one in their right mind would agree to these terms." "Exactly. Grandma was sharp as a tack when it came to money. She wouldn't touch these loans with a 10-foot pole." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Bryce, looking uncomfortable in his casual weekend clothes. "I got your messages," he said, stepping inside. "Serenity, I understand you're upset, but did you personally witness Grandma signing these documents?" I interrupted, holding up the loan papers. He hesitated. "Well, no. Madeline brought them to me already signed." "Madeline!" Enzo and I exchanged glances. "She said your grandmother was feeling under the weather and had asked her to handle the paperwork." I slammed my hand on the table. "And you didn't think to verify this with Grandma directly?" "I've known your family for years," Bryce defended. "I had no reason to doubt." "No reason?" I laughed bitterly. "Show me Grandma's signature." Enzo pulled out his laptop. "I have photos of her birthday cards from the last 5 years. Let's compare." As we laid out the documents side by side, the truth became glaringly obvious. The signatures on the recent papers were close, but not identical to Grandma's usual flowing script. "Someone forged these," I whispered, my hands shaking. "Bryce, you have to help me fix this." He ran his hands through his hair. "Even if what you're saying is true, proving it won't be easy. Madeline has already transferred most of the assets." "I don't care how hard it is," I snapped. "This isn't just about money. This is about—" The front door burst open, and Madeline stormed in, our parents trailing behind her. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, glaring at Bryce. "Why are you showing her confidential documents?" As a beneficiary, she has every right to review them," Bryce replied, standing his ground. Our father stepped forward. "Enough of this nonsense, Serenity. You're just jealous of your sister's inheritance." "Jealous?" I grabbed the signature comparisons. "Look at these, Dad. Really look at them." "I won't be part of your conspiracy theories," he said, turning away. But our mother took the papers, her hands trembling slightly as she studied them. "These don't look quite right." "Mom, please," Madeline said, her voice honey-sweet. "Don't let her manipulate you. We all know how dramatic Serenity can be." I was about to respond when something caught my eye, a small notebook falling from Madeline's oversized purse. I recognized it immediately, Grandma's daily planner. "Why do you have that?" I asked, pointing to the notebook. Madeline snatched it up quickly. "I'm clearing out her things, obviously. Without me?" I moved closer. "That's interesting, because Grandma always said her planner was private. She wrote everything in there, including notes about her financial decisions." For the first time, I saw real fear flash across Madeline's face. "Give me the notebook," I demanded. "This is ridiculous," she said, backing away. "I'm leaving." But as she turned, Enzo stepped between her and the door. The notebook slipped from her grasp, landing open on the floor. As I picked it up, a loose page fluttered out, a handwritten note in Grandma's unmistakable handwriting. "My dearest Serenity, if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. Don't trust the papers. The truth is in the numbers, and the numbers never lie. Look deeper, my girl. You always were the one who could see through the smoke and mirrors. Love, Grandma." The room fell silent. I looked up from the note to find everyone staring at me. Madeline with barely concealed panic, our parents with growing uncertainty, Bryce with dawning realization, and Enzo with quiet determination. Well, I said, tucking the note safely away, looks like Grandma left me an inheritance after all. The truth. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I had to do next. After everyone left, Enzo and I spent hours poring over Grandma's planner. Each page revealed more suspicious activity in the months leading up to her death. Look at these bank visits. Enzo pointed to several entries. 3 times in 1 week, all with Madeline present. Grandma never went to the bank that often, I said, flipping through the pages. She did everything online or had them come to her. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Your father's furious. Please drop this before you tear the family apart. I ignored it and turned to a page marked with a small star. April 15th, I read aloud. Meeting with BT, must discuss M's spending. Something isn't right. BT? Enzo asked. Bryce Thornton, and M must be Madeline. I grabbed my keys. We need to go to Grandma's house. Now? It's almost midnight. I still have a key, and Madeline won't be there until tomorrow to continue clearing things out. 20 minutes later, we crept through Grandma's dark house. Everything felt different, colder, emptier. Madeline had already stripped away most of the personal touches that made it home. Where should we start? Enzo whispered. Her study. She spent most of her time there. The study was largely untouched, probably because Madeline considered account books and old papers worthless compared to jewelry and antiques. I went straight to the desk while Enzo checked the filing cabinet. These bank statements don't match the ones Bryce showed us, he said, pulling out a folder. Keep looking, there has to be more. I ran my hands along the underside of the desk, remembering how Grandma used to hide special treats there for me as a child. My fingers caught on something, a small key taped beneath the drawer. Enzo, help me move this painting. Behind Grandma's favorite landscape was a wall safe I'd never known existed. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a thick manila envelope labeled Insurance and a USB drive. I opened the envelope first, revealing dozens of documents, original bank statements, investment records, and photographs. Holy shit, Enzo breathed, looking over my shoulder. These show completely different numbers than what was in the will. Look at this, I said, pointing to a series of transfers. Large sums moving from Grandma's accounts to offshore banks, all authorized by Madeline using power of attorney. When did she get power of attorney? According to this, 2 months before Grandma died. But that's impossible. Grandma would have told me. A floorboard creaked behind us. We spun around to find my mother standing in the doorway, her face pale in the dim light. Mom, what are you doing here? I followed you, she admitted. I needed to see for myself what you'd find. She stepped closer, picking up one of the bank statements. Your grandmother came to me about Madeline's spending. I didn't want to believe it. Why didn't you say anything? Because your father wouldn't hear a word against her. And then Paisley got sick so suddenly. Her voice trailed off. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean, suddenly? She was fine one day, then confused and weak the next. The doctor said it was just age, but... She pulled something from her pocket, a small notebook different from the planner. I found this in her bedside table last week. I've been afraid to open it. I took the notebook with trembling hands. Inside, Grandma's usually neat handwriting was shaky but clear. Something's wrong. Pills taste strange. M brings them daily now. Can't think straight. Must warn Serenity. Jesus, Enzo muttered. We need to call the police, I said, but Mom grabbed my arm. Wait, let me talk to your father first. Maybe if he sees all this evidence. Evidence of what? We all jumped. Madeline stood in the doorway, her face twisted with rage. What are you doing here? I demanded. I had a feeling you'd try something like this, she snarled, stepping into the room. Always the perfect granddaughter, always so self-righteous. Did you poison her? The words burst out before I could stop them. Madeline's laugh was hollow. Prove it. Prove any of it. Who do you think they'll believe? The responsible eldest daughter, who took care of everything, or the jealous sister who can't accept she was left nothing? They'll believe the evidence, I said, clutching the envelope and notebook. What evidence? In one swift motion, Madeline grabbed the papers and darted toward the study's fireplace. But Enzo was faster. He tackled her before she could reach it, sending papers flying everywhere. Mom screamed. I dove for the USB drive that had skittered under the desk. Got it, I yelled, holding it up. Madeline went still, her face draining of color. She knew as well as I did. In the digital age, electronic records were forever. Game over, sis, I said quietly. Grandma made sure of that. The police station's fluorescent lights made everything feel surreal. Detective Morris sat across from me, reviewing the documents and USB contents we discovered. This is quite extensive, she said, looking up from her computer. Your grandmother was thorough. She kept records of everything, I replied. The USB drive has screenshots of all the unauthorized transfers Madeline made. In the next room, through the window, I could see Madeline being questioned by another detective. She'd stopped crying an hour ago and now just sat there, staring blankly ahead. We'll need to verify these signatures with a forensics expert, Detective Morris continued, but the evidence of financial fraud is clear. The medical allegations, however— Check her phone records, Mom interrupted from beside me. She hadn't stopped shaking since we arrived. She was calling different doctors, getting multiple prescriptions. We're already looking into that. The detective made another note. The tox screen from your mother's autopsy should— Autopsy? I sat up straighter. But I thought— Given the new evidence, we've ordered one. She closed her notebook. We'll need statements from all of you, including Mr. Thornton. As if on cue, Bryce burst into the room, looking disheveled. I came as soon as I could. I've brought something you need to see. He pulled out a thick envelope sealed with wax, an old-fashioned touch that was so typically Grandma. Paisley gave this to me 6 months ago, he explained, breaking the seal. She made me promise to open it only if there was ever any dispute over her will. Inside was another will, dated before the one that had caused all this trouble. But it wasn't just a simple division of assets. As Bryce read it aloud, I realized Grandma had seen this coming. In the event that any beneficiary attempts to alter, forge, or otherwise manipulate this will or my assets, he read, all benefits shall be immediately forfeit and transferred to the wronged party. She knew, I whispered. She knew someone might try something like this. There's more, Bryce said. A letter, addressed to you, Serenity. With trembling hands, I opened it. My dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, my worst fears have come true. I've watched Madeline's greed grow over the years, seen how your father enabled it, how your mother turned a blind eye. I knew they might try to take advantage after I was gone, but I also knew you would fight for the truth. You're stronger than all of them combined, my dear. That's why I left you the most important inheritance of all, the ability to expose their lies. In my bedroom, behind the loose panel in my closet, you'll find a locked box. The key is taped inside this envelope. What's inside will ensure justice is served. All my love, Grandma. Sure enough, a small key fell from the envelope. I need to go to the house, I told Detective Morris. I'll send officers with you. The drive back felt endless. When we finally reached Grandma's house, I went straight to her closet. The panel came loose easily, revealing a metal box that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Madeline meeting with shady-looking men in parking lots, bank statements showing massive gambling debts, letters from debt collectors, and most damning of all, a video recording of Madeline arguing with Grandma about money, becoming increasingly threatening. I took that video secretly, Mom said quietly from behind me. The day before Paisley got sick, I was too scared to show anyone. I'm so sorry, Serenity. The detective took the box and its contents as evidence. As we walked back downstairs, I noticed something else, a framed photo I'd never seen before. It showed Grandma and me in her garden, both laughing at something off camera. On the back, she'd written, "To Serenity, remember that truth, like flowers, needs time to bloom. But once it does, nothing can stop it from reaching the light. My phone buzzed. A text from Enzo. Just heard from the station. Madeline confessed to the fraud. They're still investigating the medical stuff. I showed the message to Mom, who burst into tears. What about your father? She asked. He'll have to face the truth too, I said. We all will. Looking around the house, my house now, according to the real will, I felt Grandma's presence everywhere. She'd turned her own death into one final lesson about justice, truth, and consequences, and she'd trusted me to see it through. The next morning, I sat in Bryce's office, watching him sort through the mountain of paperwork needed to reverse Madeline's financial damage. The bank's frozen all the transferred assets, he said, pushing his glasses up. But some of the money's already gone. Gambling debts, luxury purchases, you name it. How much? Nearly $2 million. He handed me a spreadsheet. She was burning through it like water. My phone buzzed. Another message from Dad. We need to talk. Come to the house. I have to go, I told Bryce, standing up. My father finally wants to face this. Want me to come with you? No. This is something I need to do alone. The drive to my parents' house felt like heading into battle. Dad was waiting on the porch, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Your sister's being held without bail, he said as I approached. Did you have to involve the police? Are you serious? I stopped at the bottom of the steps. She forged documents, stole millions, and might have poisoned Grandma. We don't know that for sure. The autopsy results came back this morning, I said, watching his face carefully. They found elevated levels of prescription medications in her system, medications Madeline was getting from multiple doctors. He sank into a chair, head in his hands. Where did I go wrong with her? Maybe when you taught her she could do no wrong? When you dismissed every red flag as jealousy on my part? I never meant to. To what, Dad? To favor her? To ignore her problems until they turned criminal? To help her steal my inheritance? He looked up sharply. I didn't know about any of that. But you suspected something wasn't right, I pressed. Mom told me she tried to warn you about Madeline's spending. I thought she was just being dramatic, like... He trailed off. Like me? I laughed bitterly. Yeah, that's what Madeline always said too. The dramatic little sister, always making a fuss over nothing. Mom appeared in the doorway. The detective called. They want us to come in again. They found something in Madeline's apartment. At the police station, Detective Morris led us to an interview room. On the table sat a small box of prescription bottles, all with different doctors' names. We also found this, she said, sliding over a notebook. Your daughter's detailed records of the medications she was giving your mother, along with their effects. Dad picked up the notebook with trembling hands. I watched as he read, his face growing paler with each page. She tracked everything, Detective Morris continued. When your mother was most confused, when she was too weak to resist signing documents, when she couldn't remember conversations from one day to the next. Stop, Dad whispered. Please. No, I said firmly. You need to hear this. You need to understand what your golden child did while you were busy defending her. Ms. Morris, a young officer interrupted, poking his head in. The sister's asking to speak to them. Madeline sat in an interview room, her designer clothes replaced by prison orange. Her makeup-free face made her look younger, more like the sister I remembered from childhood. I'm sorry, she said as soon as we entered. I never meant for it to go this far. Really? I crossed my arms. Which part? The theft or the murder? I didn't murder her, Madeline protested. I needed her to be confused enough to sign the papers. The doctors said those medications were safe. In normal doses, Mom snapped. Not in the combinations you were giving her. I was desperate. The gambling debts kept growing, and I knew Grandma would never just give me the money. So, you killed her, Dad said quietly. It wasn't a question. Madeline burst into tears. Daddy, please, you have to help me. But for the first time in her life, our father turned away from her pleas. No, Madeline, you did this to yourself. As we left the station, Mom took my hand. The annual family reunion is next week. Should we cancel it? I thought about it. The whole extended family would be there, all the aunts and uncles and cousins who'd watched Madeline's rise and my supposed fall from grace. No, I decided. Let's have it at Grandma's house. My house now. It's time everyone knew the truth. Are you sure? Dad asked. It'll be uncomfortable. Grandma always said sunlight is the best disinfectant, I replied. And this family needs a good cleaning. Looking at my parents, I could see they finally understood. The truth might hurt, but lies destroy. And our family had been destroyed by lies for long enough. The day of the family reunion arrived with a mix of tension and anticipation. I'd spent the morning setting up Grandma's house, now my house, exactly as she would have wanted it. Enzo helped me arrange chairs in the living room, while Mom prepared food in the kitchen. Are you ready for this? Enzo asked, adjusting a photo of Grandma on the mantel. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Aunt Rachel burst in, followed by her husband and 3 kids. Serenity! We've heard such strange rumors. Is it true about Madeline? More relatives arrived in quick succession, each carrying dishes and whispered questions. Uncle Pete cornered me by the stairs. Someone said Madeline's in jail? That can't be right. Everyone, please take a seat, I called out over the growing murmur. I'll explain everything. They gathered in the living room, perching on chairs and sofas, some standing against the walls. Bryce arrived last, carrying a briefcase full of documents. Thank you all for coming, I began, standing before them. I know there have been rumors and questions about what's happened to our family recently. Where's Madeline? Cousin Sarah interrupted. Madeline is in custody, I said firmly, awaiting trial for fraud, forgery, and potential manslaughter charges in connection with Grandma's death. The room erupted in gasps and exclamations. That's impossible! Aunt Rachel stood up. Madeline adored Paisley. Did she? I clicked on the projector we'd set up, displaying the forged documents. Or did she adore Grandma's money? Bryce stepped forward, explaining the financial evidence, while I distributed copies of the bank statements and fraud documentation. The room grew quieter with each revelation. But why? Uncle Pete asked, his voice breaking. She had everything. Gambling debts, Mom said from the corner. She was in deep with some dangerous people. I switched the projection to the medical records. When Grandma discovered the extent of Madeline's theft, she planned to change her will. That's when Madeline started manipulating her medications. No, Aunt Rachel whispered, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Yes, Dad spoke up suddenly. He'd been silent until now. I enabled her. We all did. We saw what we wanted to see. I played the video Mom had taken. Madeline screaming at Grandma about money, making threats. The room fell silent, except for a few muffled sobs. There's more, I said, switching to the photos from the locked box. Grandma documented everything. She knew someone might try to take advantage of her, so she left evidence everywhere. But why didn't she stop it? Cousin Sarah asked. Because she was playing a longer game, I explained, revealing the conditional will. She set up a trap, one that would expose the truth and ensure justice was served. I distributed copies of Grandma's final letter, watching as they read her words about family, truth, and consequences. The real tragedy, I continued, isn't just what happened to Grandma. It's that we created an environment where Madeline thought she could get away with this. We excused her behavior, ignored the red flags, and dismissed anyone who questioned her. Like we dismissed you? Aunt Rachel said quietly. Yes. I took a deep breath. But Grandma taught me that family isn't just about blind loyalty. It's about holding each other accountable, about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. What happens now? Uncle Pete asked. Madeline will face trial. The evidence is overwhelming. I gestured to Bryce, who nodded confirmation. As for the rest of us, we need to rebuild. Not just our relationships, but our understanding of what family really means. Mom stepped forward, holding Grandma's favorite tea set. Paisley always said that broken things can be mended if you're willing to see the cracks clearly and do the work to fix them. We spent the next few hours talking, really talking, about everything that had happened. There were tears, angry outbursts, and finally, moments of genuine understanding. As the sun set, casting long shadows through Grandma's beloved garden windows, Aunt Rachel approached me. "You know," she said, "you remind me so much of Paisley. Not just your looks, but your strength. She would be proud of you." Looking around the room at my family, broken but beginning to heal, I felt Grandma's presence strongly. "She once told me," I said, touching the locket she'd given me, "that the truth is like a sunrise. No matter how dark things get, it always finds its way to the light." And in that moment, watching my family face our painful truth together, I knew she was right. The courthouse loomed before me, its stone steps already crowded with reporters. 3 months had passed since the family reunion, and today was Madeline's sentencing. "Ready?" Enzo squeezed my hand as we climbed the steps. Inside, the courtroom filled quickly. My parents sat in the row behind me, Mom clutching Dad's arm. Several family members had come too, including Aunt Rachel and Uncle Pete. Madeline entered in handcuffs, looking nothing like the polished sister I remembered. Her eyes met mine briefly, before darting away. "All rise," the bailiff called out. Judge Harrison reviewed the papers before her. "In the matter of financial fraud, forgery, and second-degree manslaughter, the defendant has entered a guilty plea. Before I pass sentence, would the victim's family like to make a statement?" I stood, my prepared speech forgotten as I faced my sister. "Madeline," I began, my voice steady, "I've spent months trying to understand why. Why you chose money over family, why you hurt the person who loved you most. But I realized something. Understanding why won't change what happened." She started crying silently. "Grandma used to say that our choices shape who we become. You chose greed over love, deception over truth, and in the end, you chose to silence the one person who might have helped you." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Sorry doesn't bring her back. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you watched her deteriorate, knowing you were causing it. Sorry doesn't rebuild our family's trust." Dad made a choked sound behind me. "But Grandma also taught me about forgiveness," I continued. "Not the kind that excuses actions, but the kind that frees us from hatred. So I forgive you, Madeline. Not for you, but for me. Because I refuse to let your choices poison my heart the way they poisoned yours." The judge nodded as I sat down. "Would the defendant like to speak?" Madeline stood shakily. "I destroyed everything that mattered, because I couldn't see what really mattered. My sister talks about choices. I made all the wrong ones. I killed the person who loved me most, betrayed my family, and hurt the sister who always tried to protect me." She turned to face me. "You were right all along, Serenity. About everything. I just hope someday you can believe how sorry I am." Judge Harrison cleared her throat. "Based on the plea agreement and the severity of these crimes, I sentence you to 15 years in state prison, with possibility of parole after 10 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution of all stolen funds." The gavel struck with finality. As they led Madeline away, Mom broke down. Dad held her, his own eyes wet with tears. "Wait!" Madeline called out suddenly. "Serenity, there's something in my apartment, in the back of my closet, a box. It belongs to you." That evening, the police escort let me into Madeline's apartment. In her closet, behind designer shoes now destined for auction, I found an old shoebox. Inside were childhood photos, birthday cards, and a letter from Grandma dated just weeks before her death. "My dearest Madeline," it read, "I see the path you're on, and it breaks my heart. Money is just paper, but family is forever. It's not too late to change course. Your sister would help you if you'd only ask. Love, Grandma." Madeline had never asked. Back home, I found Mom sitting in Grandma's garden. My garden now. "I found this," she said, holding up a small journal. "Paisley's gardening notes. Look what she wrote about her roses." I read the passage. "Like family, roses need both sunshine and rain to grow strong. Too much of either will kill them. The trick is finding balance, knowing when to prune and when to protect." She left us so many messages, Mom said softly. We just weren't listening. We're listening now. Dad appeared in the doorway. The detective called. They've traced most of the missing money. Once the accounts are unfrozen, everything will be restored to you. Ah, it was never about the money, I said, touching a rose petal. It was about truth, justice, family. Your grandmother knew that, he replied. She knew you'd understand it too. As the sun set over the garden, I thought about choices and consequences, about forgiveness and justice. Madeline would spend years paying for her choices, but in a way, we all would. The difference was that while she faced her consequences alone in a cell, we would face ours together, as a family. Because that's what Grandma had wanted all along, not for us to be perfect, but for us to be honest. Not for us to avoid pain, but to face it together. Not for us to be unbreakable, but to know how to rebuild when we break. And somehow, in her wisdom, she'd made sure we'd learn these lessons, even after she was gone. The autumn breeze scattered leaves across Grandma's garden as I unlocked her study, my study now. Enzo followed me in, carrying boxes of newly organized financial records. Last batch, he said, setting them down. Everything's finally sorted. I ran my hand along the polished desk where Grandma used to write her letters. Hard to believe it's all settled. The doorbell rang. Mom and Dad arrived with Uncle Pete and Aunt Rachel, followed by Bryce carrying his briefcase. Ready to do this? Bryce asked, spreading documents across the desk. Almost. I opened the safe behind the painting, removing Grandma's final letter, the one I'd been saving for this moment. Everyone settled into chairs as I began to read. To my beloved family, if you're reading this, the truth has finally come to light. The path to this moment has been painful, but necessary. You see, I didn't just leave an inheritance of money and property. I left you something far more valuable, the chance to rebuild what greed and secrets had destroyed. Serenity, my brave girl. You were never meant to inherit debt. You were meant to inherit truth. Your sister's actions forced you to fight for justice, and in doing so, you showed everyone what real family loyalty means. To my daughter, Patricia, and son-in-law, Reuben, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning and growing stronger. Your journey isn't over, it's just beginning. The money recovered from Madeline's fraud isn't meant to divide you further. Instead, I've arranged for it to be placed in a family trust with specific conditions. I paused, looking at Bryce, who nodded and pulled out additional papers. The trust, he explained, can only be accessed for 3 purposes: education, medical care, or starting ethical businesses. All decisions must be unanimous among the trustees: Serenity, Patricia, and Rachel. She made sure we'd have to work together, Aunt Rachel said softly. There's more, I continued reading. Money divided us once. Let it unite you now. The house isn't just Serenity's property, it's our family's anchor. Use it. Fill it with love and laughter again. Learn from our mistakes. And remember, the garden needs tending, just like relationships do. Some plants will die, others will bloom unexpectedly. The key is never giving up on growth. All my love, Paisley. Dad cleared his throat. I visited Madeline yesterday. We all turned to look at him. She's enrolled in the prison's financial counseling program, teaching other inmates about gambling addiction. He paused. She asked about you, Serenity. I know, I said. She writes to me every week. I haven't answered yet, but I will, when it feels right. Mom touched the garden roses visible through the window. Paisley would be proud of how you've maintained her garden. Actually, I said, I've been thinking about that. I pulled out a blueprint. What if we turned part of the grounds into a community garden? A place where families can grow things together, learn from each other. The trust could fund it, Aunt Rachel suggested. It's educational, after all. We could dedicate it to Paisley, Uncle Pete added. Her legacy of growing things, plants and people. As they discussed details, I walked to the window. The garden stretched before me, some plants fading with the season, others stubbornly blooming despite the chill. Like us, damaged but resilient, changing but alive. Serenity? Enzo appeared beside me. They're ready to sign the trust documents. I turned back to my family. Not perfect, but healing. Mom and Dad holding hands, stronger in their rebuilt marriage. Aunt Rachel and Uncle Pete contributing ideas for the community garden. Bryce organizing papers with his usual precision. The empty chair where Madeline should have been felt less accusatory now, more like a reminder that absence doesn't mean ending. Her story, like ours, was still being written. I sat at Grandma's desk, my desk, and picked up the pen. Before we sign, I said, I want us to promise something. Not just to follow the trust's rules, but to honor its spirit. To remember that our worth isn't in our bank accounts, but in how we treat each other. To understand that family isn't about perfection, it's about connection. One by one, they nodded. Then let's begin again, I said, signing my name where Bryce indicated. Not as victims or villains, but as people who learned the hard way that love is more valuable than money. As the others signed, I glanced at Grandma's photo on the wall. She was smiling that knowing smile of hers, the one that said she understood everything long before we did. And finally, so did we.